Last night, I threw up a picture. I said that my family is a mess. And it's really easy, if I'm going to be honest with you, to get up on this stage and throw up a picture of my family and to have like half of you go, oh, like that's so cute. And to make myself sound like a really good dad and husband because I only tell you the highlights, right? It's like being on stage is like watching Instagram in real life. Like it's just like I just get to show you my highlights and make you laugh or make you try to love my kids or do an illustration or something. And that's good and that's important. But can we actually bring that picture up? Okay, so this is the picture I showed last night. And you know the phrase, like a picture's worth 1,000 words? Like when it comes to pictures of family, or when it comes just to families in general, like 1,000 words is not nearly enough. Like I threw this up and there's maybe a few alls again. Like that's great. Like I'm glad that you enjoy the picture, but can I tell you what was really going on this day? Okay, so this was like around Thanksgiving this last year. Like this was our Christmas card. It went out to like 200 people. Like I don't know 200 people, but somehow my wife had 200 addresses that we had to get a card out. Like she threw it up on Instagram. Like this was like a big deal. My wife loves family pictures and I love my wife. And so I go along with it. But if I'm honest, like this was not our first attempt at family pictures. Like we took this at Thanksgiving at the same time when we started receiving other people's pictures, because the first two times we were like, oh, we're just going to do it ourselves. Like we're going to get a selfie stick and it's going to be like kind of cool, and it was not cool. My wife wasn't satisfied. So then we tried it again with like some kind of like weird apparatus that like could time it, and that didn't work. And so we finally had to like bite the bullet and like pay someone to do this. And I was frustrated because this was like the third time I'm wearing that weird sweater hat combo. Like I was not happy. We were driving 2 hours away from family to go to this like perfect woodland area, and we were late. And so I was stressed. We were spending all this money. It was 30 degrees when we were taking this photo. It's freezing. But my wife could not deprive the world of our amazing muscles or whatever reason it was. And so we all had to dress down as if it was really autumn when really it's closer to winter. You see, pointed this out last night that Jude is not having it. He's the only one being honest because we were all like that. On the way to these pictures, my wife and I got in a huge fight in the car. Like huge, in front of the kids, just so stressed. Part of the reason we were so stressed was because about 3 weeks before this, my wife lost her job. Her department got outsourced, and so money was tight, and here we are driving 2 hours to find this great photographer in wood area. And we're pinching pennies, and now I'm running late, and we're on the clock, and Jude and Bo, like we had to wake them up from a nap, so they were hungry for a snack. They were just in a horrible mood. Nash just wanted to eat. He had a full diaper. It was completely uncomfortable. We forgot the diaper bag. And Josie right there in the middle, we didn't know this, but within 24 hours of taking these pictures, she would come down with COVID and be in the hospital for the next few days. Like it's easy to show you a picture and to make everyone go, ah. But behind the picture, there's always more to the story. And then I don't know what your picture of family is, but I know you have one. And I'm not talking about this picture. Like I'm talking like when you think of family, you have like a picture perfect idea of what family should be. And I don't know if you get that from television. Maybe you're like one of those families that like rented like old videos from the library and you like grew up on like Little House on the Prairie and like that's like a perfect family. Like I don't know, like maybe you get that from your friend's family. Maybe you have a perfect family of your own. And that's okay no matter what your picture is. But here's the deal with having a perfect picture of a family is that rarely can we live up to a perfect picture. And when we hold a picture in front of us of what a family should be, then all of a sudden we have this pressure to make sure that we measure up. But the problem is if we don't measure up, then we give up and then we check out, and our family is more broken than it was in the first place. You see, because I can tell you as a parent, and sorry parents for spoiling this, we have no idea what we're doing as parents. I mean, I honestly, I remember bringing home Addie, my oldest, from the hospital the first night, feeding her. We changed her. We did the whole thing. We put her down in bed, and I gave my wife a high five that we made it through like day one. Like I was like, okay, like only what? Like 18 more years of this? Like how long do we do this? Like we're figuring it out as we go. Some of the parents in this room and youth ministers, like you guys are experts. Like I said, I'm not. Like every day is something new with my family, and there's fighting, and there's there's brokenness, and whether it's between me and my wife or me and my kids or my kids and each other, like, how do you deal with that? Like, the answer is not comparison. The answer is not looking at your friend's family or that picture-perfect family and saying, like, man, that's what I want. Maybe there's some good things that we can take from that, but the one thing that I've learned is that there's no win in comparison. Like, if your family is messy, okay. Let's admit that and move into that. Let's lean into that, not disengage. We don't have to give up just because we don't measure up all the time. And as much as I want to say, like, but hey, let's dive into the Bible and get some good practical tips, because there are a ton of practical tips, but there's also a ton of families in the Bible. And so can I just share real quick about some of the families that are in Scripture? Because I think it's important to know what this looks like compared to your life. And if you just think back, like at the very beginning, you have Adam and Eve, right? God started this whole thing through a family. But if you remember the story, like something happens, and Adam blames Eve, and sin enters the world, and one of their kids kills the other kid. Like that's not a good start. But that really is where your dysfunction and my dysfunction gets its start. You know, you move on a little bit, and you got Noah, and you probably know Noah, right? Like he built the ark, all the animals, but there's this story after all of that where he found himself in an inappropriate situation, and we won't go into everything, but he got drunk in a cave and brought shame and embarrassment to his family. Like that's not supposed to be the patriarch, the leader, the one who saved the world. You have like Jacob and Esau, right? These brothers, the sibling rivalry. Like that Jacob stole his birthright, his inheritance from his brother that lasts a lifetime. Like that's not, like you have King David, like a man after God's own heart. Like the leader of the kingdom, like the one that everyone looked to, like waited for someone to sit on David's throne. Like, but like his marriage, like the queen, like that started with an affair. Like I don't know if you know that. And there's all kinds of mess that happened because of the way that his relationship with Bathsheba started. But all that's Old Testament. You know, because then you like move forward to the New Testament, and then you fall and you find like Mary and Joseph. You got the Holy Family. Like finally, like there's a family that's doing it right, and they did. Like they are the Holy Family. But there's a reason that even the church doesn't call them the perfect family, because when we look at like Mary and Joseph and Jesus, we tend to gloss over the part where it started with a teenage pregnancy, or that like 12 years later they left Jesus in church for 3 days and left him behind. Like, that's crazy. Like, if that was today, like, parental services would be all over them. Like, here's the thing. When I read about families in the Bible, I feel better about mine. Like, it's true. And here's the thing about your family, because I don't know your mess. But I know that there's a change, and there may be a key that we can start to lean in, that we can change from disengaging to engaging if we just change one thing. And then I think that is good, that we need to move from a picture mindset to a story mindset. We need to change this ideal image from this picture-perfect mentality of family to a story. You see, because God, He doesn't use perfect pictures. He uses imperfect people like you and me. Like he's not going to change the world through a picture. He's going to change the world through you. He's going to change his family through you. And I'm not saying that you go home and things are going to be different just because you went to a conference. It's probably actually the opposite. This is different. This is unique. Your home is going to be the same. That like annoying sibling that you left at home, they're still annoying. The things that causes fights between you and your parents, they're still going to cause fights. That picture of what you want your family to be needs to change if the family's going to change. Like we need to move into a story because pictures break. This is an iPad, but if this was a picture frame and I dropped it, it would break. And no matter what I did to put the pieces of glass back together, it would never be the same. Why? Because glass breaks. But a story, A story doesn't break. Like a story may have ups and downs, but there's always a way back in. So whatever your situation is, it doesn't end with that fight. It didn't end with a divorce. It doesn't end even with death. Because when we change our understanding from a picture to a story, there's always another opportunity around the corner where God can start to move, and we can allow God to move through us. Guys, and I don't know why God did families the way he did, but it's actually kind of genius. Because you and I are brought in to a family, again, not knowing what that is, but it's a school of love. Even through the hardest times, we have the opportunity to learn either how we should act or how we should never act. It's a school of learning. It's a school of love. And although you are formed by your family, it doesn't have to define you. And because I know that some of you have, I started reading through some of the questions, it sounds like you've had hard experiences where maybe you haven't talked to a parent in years. And I'm so sorry. And that doesn't define you. It doesn't define your actions now. It doesn't define the way you will love. It doesn't define your future or your future family. Because when we start to look at the story and we look at family through the story of what God is doing, like Jesus was revealed through family. And I don't know what he wants to do in yours, but I know he wants to reveal himself within your family. You know, I think back to when I was your age, my family, we were Sunday Catholics at best. Actually, we didn't even go to church most Sundays until I went to Catholic school, and then my parents found out that they got a discount if they were at Mass every weekend and dropped in an envelope, regardless if they had money or not. So that's why we actually started going to church, so that like my Catholic education was a little cheaper for my parents. Like I didn't know the faith. I didn't know like who Jesus was, or that there was more to this whole thing than spending an hour in a dark church on Sundays. And even when I would come to these conferences, when I was in high school, I'd go home, and my parents would be like, how was it? And I'd be like, it was good. And nothing would change. They didn't see a change in me. Like, was I changing? Sure. Like, was I praying more? Yeah. Was I falling in love with God? Yeah. But you know, one of the things that started to change in my family, this is so stupid. This is such a small thing. It was maybe after my second or third conference, just like this. And I was home, and I was just sitting in the kitchen, and my mom, I don't know what she was doing. She was like preparing lunch, I guess, and she was trying to open a jar of pickles, okay? This is so weird. And I saw her struggling, and like a 16-year-old boy or whatever I was, most of the time I would have saw them as like, weak, you know? But like for whatever reason, after this conference, I walked up to her, and I said, here, let me help. I opened the jar of pickles and gave it back to her, and I walked back to my spot where I was sitting, and I look back at her, and she's crying. And I'm like, what? Like, what the heck just happened? Is this menopause? Like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. And she goes, you've changed. And I was like, I just opened a jar of pickles. And she's like, you would have never done that for me before this conference. And I was like, what? Like, that's all it takes? Like, that's all it took to show my mom that there was maybe something different about me? You see, and here's the thing, and I don't take credit for anything that happened in my family. Like I said, it's been said a few times, me and my brother, like we started going to these conferences in high school, and something started happening in us. And it was these little things, like something as easy as opening a jar of pickles that got my parents' attention. And my parents are amazing, but it got their attention. They're just like, do you guys need chaperones for that next year? Can we go? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't. What? So they talk to the priest, and they start going. And my faith is growing, and then my parents' faith is growing, and then we're bringing my sister to these conferences. And little by little, like my whole family is growing in the faith together. And as we're growing in the faith together, things that we had never talked about started coming to light. some of the wounds, some of the hardships, some of the issues, like, man, like we don't say we love you enough, like we don't show enough physical affection, like we're able to start talking about those things and the needs of our heart. And it was all centered around our mutual faith, love, and understanding that God has something more for us. So I don't know what God wants to do in your family, but I know he wants to move in it. And you may be that thing. You may be the person. You may be the spark. You know, in the book of Ephesians, chapter 3, we're going to bring this up on the screen. Paul, he's writing to this young church. He says this. I'm trying to find my Bible. For this reason, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named. Okay, I just want to pause here. That every family in heaven and on earth has received its name, like even just the name family. That something about family, images, models, gets its identity from God. Because why? Because God is a community of love, Father, Son, and Spirit, where love is being given and received all the time. And I read this for the first time, and I was like, man, like that is not my experience sometimes. Like even in my family, like man, like I do not love my wife enough. Man, like I get so annoyed by my kids. Man, like I just don't know if I'm cut out for this. Like I don't know if I have the energy to be the guy that my family needs. But there's something about when we look to God, to this relationship of love in the Trinity, that we can pull from. And we can see that there's a story happening. Like I told you the other day, last night, like part of my story is a silly football injury that put me on a whole different path. Like the little thing for you may be something as easy as going home on Sunday tomorrow and just telling your mom you love her. It might be taking the time to ask like, hey, what did I miss this weekend? Or taking your little sibling out for ice cream. Don't underestimate the little things that you do for your family. Actually, I want to challenge you to do just 3 things. Like in a second, I want to get into these really practical things. I want to get into the questions that you guys have asked. If you want to still text questions in through the app, you still can do that. But I want to challenge you to do 3 things. And again, we're come from different situations. But if you can do these 3 things in the next week, you're going to bring grace and at least opportunity for God to move in your family. And the first thing is that, and you can do this right now, is I want you to start praying for the members of your family by name. And again, I don't know what your family looks like. Maybe you have 2 families. Pray for them all. Maybe you have a situation or a relationship in your family that's just so stretched out, so thin. Maybe prayer is going to be the first step in reconciling that, or at least learning how to love in that distance. So the first thing is pray. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be like a full-on rosary or going to an extra mass or lighting candles in the back of church. I'm saying like wake up in the morning and be like, hey, God, please bless my mom and dad and my siblings today. That's simple prayer. Can you do that? 2, okay, is I want you to go home and say I love you to one person. It can be your favorite person in your family. It could be the person you say I love you to the least. It could be the most difficult person. And I know that sounds cheesy. Like I know that sounds maybe even easy, or maybe it's hard. But if we don't show love, if we don't tell people that we love them, how are they going to know? So pray, say I love you, and the last thing is do just one act of kindness. Maybe it's doing a chore without being asked. Maybe it's taking your sibling out to the park to play catch, spend some quality time with them, or maybe you're even just like watching TV this week and just like, here, do you want to take the remote? Like these things, they're not complicated, but they're things that we take for granted. And the thing is that whoever your whoever your family is, like they love you. Like there are people in your life who love you. And I'm not saying that they know how to show it. I'm not saying that they're perfect. And I'm not trying to gloss over any of the messiness. And I hate that some of you in this room have to act like the adult and be the one to give love first. But those three things of one act of kindness, one I love you, and a simple prayer, it's not asking a lot. And so if we can do this, like the little things, and we can start to see a story unfold, because God revealed himself through a family. Now he wants to move through your family. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what reconciliation is going to come. I don't know what relationships are going to be healed. Or I don't know how your family is going to start to bless other families, your neighbors. But I know that God is faithful. And I know that God has a plan for families. And through the family, he wants to make his love known to the world. And you, for better or for worse, are a part of it. And so you can choose to make it for the better by those three things. Pray, say I love you, do one act of kindness. Cool? Like I said, I don't want to talk too much about this because our situations are so different. So I'm actually going to invite up Sister, and she's going to join me for some of these Q&As. Sister, do you want a stool? Do you want my stool? Come on up, Sister.
Okay.
We can stand. Let's stand.
I think they're going to bring a stool.
Give everyone a round of applause for Sister. I do have the questions. Yeah, Sister, I'm going to throw you under the bus. So, Sister, if you don't know, her background, what she actually does, and Sister, maybe you can say this a little more, you actually do some counseling and work down in Texas, right?
I'm a licensed counselor
Awesome.
in the state of Texas, yeah.
Which is great. So as much as I said I am not an expert, Sister offers a little bit more of that, which is amazing. All right. So again, these questions are coming from what you guys have asked. Okay, so the first question. What do you do if you feel like a relationship within your family is unhealable? Everything is possible with God, but this long-term wound seems especially difficult to fix. I'll let you answer first.
So relationships, for us to have like a healthy relationship, a healable relationship, there does have to be like a mutual, right? So two people have to be able to meet there. And so sometimes on this earthly pilgrimage, right? We're not talking about in heaven, but on the earthly pilgrimage, there are some times where both people aren't able to be present to the relationship being healed. That doesn't mean that Jesus can't heal your heart and the wounds that you experience in that relationship, but the relationship itself, the bond, does require two people to show up for that. So sometimes that is a loss that we experience in our pilgrimage on earth. And so I encourage you to grieve that. It's just so important, that we name those losses, the things that we long for, that we might not be able to have, especially if we have a family member who just isn't able for whatever reason to show up. That doesn't mean that you personally are going to be left alone in those wounds. Jesus can still work with you, but that may not include the healing of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to leave it there because we do have quite a few to go through, so we're just going to try to run through these. How do I overcome fear to talk about faith with my family?
Do you want me to answer them all, or you want to
I'll take this one
Okay.
real quick. So the first thing is, like I said earlier, pray for those opportunities. Like pray. If there is a situation or there's someone who's like, man, like my sister, my brother, my mom, they need to know Jesus. Pray that God opens the door. And then be ready for that. The other thing I think that is so easy, sometimes we make a big deal of evangelization or talking about our faith. Actually, one of the greatest lessons that I learned about evangelization was when I lived down here in Louisiana, because like most people, like I'm from the Midwest, like I eat so I can live, but like I quickly learned that in Louisiana, like it's the other way around. Like you live to eat. Like, so, and I'm not, like, it was amazing, but I just remember, like, going out to eat with my pastor and being like, all right, like, yeah, I got time to eat. Like, I've got, like, an hour, that's fine. And it would be, like, a 4-hour ordeal every time, just because, like, it was always about, like, just good food, good company, good conversation. But here's the thing. When I would go out to eat with my pastor, every time, I'm not exaggerating, every time, the waiter or the waitress would end up sitting at our table in tears as we were talking about the Lord and what God wanted to do in their life. And it wasn't me as my pastor, and I was just in awe of what he was able to do. And the first time he did this, I was just awestruck. I was like, how did you do that? And he said one thing. He said, in through their door, out through mine. And what he would do is he would get to know their name. And then next time he'd come back to the table, he'd get to know a little bit about their story. And then he'd start to ask them a little bit deeper questions. And eventually there'd be an opportunity where he could present the gospel. And so when it comes to like sharing the faith with your family, like in through their door, out through yours. Like maybe it's doing something that they enjoy. Or maybe it's spending time with them on their turf, on their reasons. But when the opportunity comes up, like, man, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you so happy? Well, crazy thing. First, because I love you, but also because I love Jesus, and like I want you to know that. Okay, do you have a second to talk? Like you just kind of wait for that opportunity, but it's easier to see those and find those if we're praying for them first. And so start with that. Do you want to add anything?
No, that's beautiful. It just, yeah, like your presence is a gift, your witness is a gift, and this can form and transform hearts as well.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard being the oldest. So how does one cooperate with being blamed for everything? I get it. I don't know if I'm the oldest because I'm a twin. Maybe I'm the oldest. Nick? I don't know. I'll say this because I even see it in my 9-year-old where she's like, you blame me for everything. I'm like, because you're 9. You still do things wrong. I'm not saying that she should be blamed for everything or that you should be blamed for everything. The thing that I appreciate as a parent is when my daughter tells me, and she's like, hey, I feel like I'm always getting in trouble. She's very mature for a 9-year-old. And I'm just like, hey, I'm so sorry. You're right. Now, maybe your parents can honor how you're feeling, or maybe they're not going to be in a space to do that. But you can take that step and say, hey, here's how I'm feeling. The other thing as the oldest is that you can take on that responsibility to help your siblings, to help them see what's coming. But you should not be blamed for everything because it's not your fault. And it is so easy for the parent to project onto their kids. And I remember that as a kid, and I see myself doing it. So I would say talk to your parents. Let them know how you feel, and hopefully they receive it well.
The only thing I'd add is sometimes with the oldest, there's a tendency, even if the parents haven't asked you, to assume you are responsible for things that you are not responsible for. And so sometimes even just to pause and ask yourself, you're old enough to do this now. Am I taking some of this on myself just because you're used to having to help out, and so you've kind of increased your scope of responsibility from child into parent. So sometimes we could take it on ourselves, but then think they're doing it to us.
Awesome. What do you do when your parent questions what you want to be? I'll say this. The Lord commands us to honor our father and mother, right? So I remember when I started to fall in love with Jesus, and again, we were all kind of growing, but for me to go to this small Catholic school and just say hey, I'm going to be a youth minister, that was not my parents' plan for me. They weren't against it, but they're just okay, yeah, maybe you can do youth ministry at night and you can be a doctor or a lawyer during the day. And I was like, I don't think it works that way. I don't know, but I feel and they really questioned me. And they said hey, fine, you can go to this Catholic school, but as soon as you hit this amount of debt because we can't pay for it, we're pulling you. And I'm just man, don't you just trust God? Don't you trust me? Aren't you gonna let me be me? Here's where there was a turning point in my conversation with my parents is when I stopped dismissing them and I asked my dad to go down and sit and talk to me about what he actually wanted from me in college. And that I actually gave him the time to listen. And then what I did is I said, well, can I tell you what I think about what I would like to do? And then he listened. Now, we have to honor our parents. Your parents trying to tell you what to do, it's them trying to love you in one way or another. I'm not saying they'd probably do it perfectly. I know I don't. I know my dad didn't. I know my mom doesn't. But if we can honor them and listen and then speak and have a conversation around it, it might be more productive than trying to run away from it.
The only thing I would add is sometimes, especially when you say what I want to be, it's a good thing, and your parents are still like, no, I don't know if that's what I want for you or what I see for you. A lot of times, the things I'm thinking about, I feel called to be, I've had a lot more time with it than my parents have. And so my superior general said to me once, it was great advice. She said, like, she was saying it in regards to my vocation, but I think it could apply to other things, that God has given you time with this idea of what you would like to be, so let God give your family time.
Yeah. We have time for a few more. And sister, I'm going to let you take this one. I don't have a good relationship at all with my dad, who has hurt me countless times throughout my life. And for about a year, I've completely stopped talking to him. I personally have felt much more peace without being in contact with him, but how can I learn to forgive him and even love him despite all the hurt I've experienced?
Can I see it? I'm
Yep.
sorry.
It's right there on the top.
I don't have a good relationship at all with my dad, who has hurt me countless times throughout my life. And for about a year, I've stopped talking to him. I personally have felt much more peace without being in contact with him, but now can I learn to forgive him and even love him despite of all the hurt I have experienced? So just two things I'll say. Like forgiveness is a gift from God. So our work is to say, I'm open to receiving forgiveness, right? I'm ready to receive that from God, this grace, and then God will grant us that grace according to his will. So that's kind of like that first step to take. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. And so, I don't know the nature of the hurt from the father that's mentioned in this question, but sometimes some relationships, it's good to have kind of more distant boundaries in them. It is incredibly painful if that is with your father. It's a huge grief process. In some ways, it's worse than death when there's someone that we can't be close to, but they're still alive. That we have to have a lot of space between us for our well-being. So forgiveness and reconciliation don't go together. You can definitely pray to God to give you the grace to forgive. That doesn't mean you have to resume the relationship, particularly if it's abusive or harmful.
Yeah. Another question. What should you do if your dad doesn't put effort in your father-daughter relationship, but spends time with your other siblings and acts like you're invisible or a mistake to his life? I'm so sorry this is your experience. Sister, I'd love for you to comment on this too, but one thing that's true for all of us is that our families are meant to be an image or an echo of the family that we're called to ultimately be a part of in heaven. And so our families here are going to break our hearts at one time or another, in some way or another. Like, I am not going to be a perfect father, and my father was not the perfect father. But we always have a perfect father in heaven. And so whoever this is, one thing that you can do, and a priest friend of mine actually challenged me to start doing this in my prayer, is when I go to pray to God the Father, I always had a hard time connecting with him. Like, Jesus I got, the Holy Spirit, sure. But God the Father just seemed a little bit more distant for me. And he said, well, why don't you start calling him Dad? And so I would start praying, and it'd be like, that sounds weird, but okay, so, Father, like, hey, Dad, like, I'm hurting today. I'm hurting today. Will you show me your love? Like, it changed the intimacy for me. And so whoever you are, if this situation relates to you in any way, I would try to pray to your Heavenly Father, maybe even calling him Dad, and letting that relationship strengthen and maybe refine and start to make some of the healings in your heart.
The only thing I'll add is just to affirm the person who asked the question. It's so beautiful that you know the desires of your heart, that you long for more, and that's just such a huge first step, that you know that you would like that and to ask for that, and so that's all I would add.
Are you ever embarrassed by your family in public?
Yes.
Yeah. And now I'm the dad, so I'm the one who gets to embarrass my kids. Like it comes full circle. So just remember that you'll get to do it someday too, probably. Is there a way you can bring your family back together? We are a family of 7, and I just feel so disconnected from the different age gaps.
So I just think God will always provide opportunities, right? So the work of the kingdom in this world is a gathering work, like a reconciliation. When God's work is done in this world, we're going to be gathered into one human family. So God is always at work in your family, even when it's a mess. That doesn't mean that God ceases to abide there and strive to bring about the kingdom, which is a gathering together, reconciliation, one family. So I think there's always this chance that your family can come back together. And I can witness to that. I'm adopted. I was adopted when I was 8 years old. And so I was raised by my aunt and uncle from 8 years old on. My mother, when I was 6, she was not able to care for us because she had struggles. And then when I was 8 years old, my father took his life. He was struggling with drug addiction. And these were scathing wounds. And we were just kind of scattered. You know, we didn't go back to our mom. We went to our aunt and uncle. I didn't see my mother from the age of 6 to 29. And then I saw her at the age of 29. And my brothers at that time said, no, we don't want to see her. And then eventually my brothers saw her. And then eventually she came to a gathering of the entire family. And that gathering was my first vows. And before that, she had never met my aunt who raised me. And so I got to see my aunt welcome her and serve her. And so I think God can do great things over time. But the greatest thing will be in heaven, right? And when the kingdom comes fully, like that will be the greatest thing.
Okay. There's a bunch of questions, or definitely a few questions that are pretty vulnerable, and a lot of you guys are experiencing some difficult things. Maybe a father who has hurt you, or a mother who has left, or there's one question. A lot of them seem to have the same basic ending of how do I heal or how do I help? And so I'm going to ask this one and try to encompass a lot of maybe the same type of answer within that. So this person wrote, please answer, how do I heal from my alcoholic mother? She has put me through hell, and I don't know how to help or heal her, and I'm tired of being the adult, plus all the abuse and toxic boyfriends that she has brought around. Real quick, it is none of our responsibility to heal anyone. Not to say that we can't help, not to say that we should run away, but again, we can lean in to our relationship with God, who is the healer, and we can ask him to heal our own wounds and the wounds of our family and to protect us. Now, there's some practical things that I would say that we should do is one, is you need to find support. Like whether it's counseling, which there's nothing to be ashamed of there, whether it's talking to your youth minister, whether it's talking to your priest, talking to someone who knows you and cares for you, who can help you, and maybe even help you discern if it's even safe for you to be in whatever situation you're in. You got to pray. But like Sister said earlier, like where's that healthy boundary? Like what is something you can do, and what are the things that you don't need to do in that situation? And so, Sister, I'd love for you to speak a little bit more into that.
Yeah, the first step is your safety. And I know, I've worked with young people before who it wasn't safe for you to stay in your home. And I know you want nothing but to be able to stay with your parents and for that to work out. But sometimes, if we can get you safe, it can help your parent to learn about safety too. And so the first thing is, if you're not safe, we would need to get you somewhere safe, okay? And the second thing, when I am the child of someone struggling with an addiction, it's real complex. And so therapy is really, really quite, to a certain degree, essential. because it's a complex experience. So those are the two things: your safety, and to know that I know it's scary to ask for help because you're like, I don't want to leave my family. But sometimes that change can help everybody get better and get safe, and it can be temporary, and help people get what they need and get you resources that you need. And then the second one is therapy can be a huge help. And I tell, my clients all the time that, the Sacred Heart of Jesus reigns in the counseling room. So counseling is a very Catholic thing to go do, and to not be ashamed of that, the need to get help from a counselor.
Yeah. There's a few other questions that are close to this. Some of you guys are going off to college, and you're close to your family, and now you're like, okay, how do I do this out on my own? Some of you guys have asked, how do I learn to love outside of my family? Our hearts, we're created for a relationship. And so many of us have messy families, broken families. And if we don't find that relationship in the family, it does, that's why, I don't know if this is still said around here, but your fam, you go find your fam, you find a family, we're created for that. And so if you're going off to college, find a family, find your support, find the people who are going to care for you and love you like a family, who aren't going to just turn their back on you when things get hard. Create a family, create a family of friends. And if you are in a family that you just don't feel like you're learning how to love because of different situations and it's just too hard to love, create a family. Be a witness of family and create a family with your friends, with people who care about you, people who do spend time with you, and learn to love with them. Anything?
I just love the question. I think sometimes we assume that when we have longings or worries like that, it means that something is wrong. That's a beautiful question. You are longing for community, right? You're grateful for your family. You want to have another experience of family when you kind of make this departure from the nest. That's good. That means there's good stuff going on in your heart. We should long for love and relationships. So I'm glad for whoever asked that question.
Yeah. All right, and we got to go. This is the last question. Who's your favorite person here? Mine's sister.
Well, mine is Nick.
All right, that's all we got. Guys, I know families are messy, but we're praying for you. Go home, love them, pray for them, do something kind, and let God move through you. Amen?